the con is ultimately this message that we've been told over and over and over again of this false formula. If X happens, then I'll feel confident, right? So fill in X with whatever you want. If I get the compliments, then I'll feel confident. If I get the income, the achievement, the perfectly behaved children, the certain number on a scale, the certain size that I wear, the validation from this person, then I'll feel confident. That formula will never work because your confidence isn't out there. There isn't something or someone holding onto it for you. And all those things can still feel good. It's great to achieve. It's wonderful to get complimented. It's great when somebody comes along and validates your work. But all those things should be icing on the confidence cake, not the cake itself.
Hi, I'm Blake Schofield, founder and CEO of The Bridge to Fulfillment, mom to 3, USA Today top 10 professional coach, and former corporate executive who got tired of sacrificing my life for a comfortable paycheck. My mission is to expand women's perspectives and empower them to achieve greater impact at home and work without sacrifice. This is The Bridge to Fulfillment. I'm really excited to introduce you to our guest expert on today's episode, Nicole Kalil. Nicole's passion for eliminating gender expectations and redefining women's work is both what keeps her up at night and what gets her up in the morning. Well, that and an abundant amount of coffee. An in-demand speaker, leadership strategist, respected coach, and host of This Is Women's Work podcast, her stalker-like obsession with confidence sets her apart from the constant stream of experts telling us to be confident. She actually tells you how to build it and gives actionable tools, not just stories, to become confident. A fugitive of the C-suite at a Fortune 100 company, she's coached hundreds of women in business, which has given her insight as to what, structurally, systemically, and socially, is and isn't serving women and leaders within an organization. Maintaining some semblance of sanity in her different roles of wife, mother, and business owner successfully is an ongoing challenge. In whatever free time she has, she enjoys reading and wine guzzling, is an avid cheese enthusiast, a hotel snob, and a reluctant Peloton rider. In today's episode, Nicole and I had a great conversation that just always reminds me that success leaves clues. There are threads of truth that every successful person has found. We might say them in different ways, we might have experienced or come to them in different ways, but at the end is the same fundamental truth. I'm excited for her to share what she's learned about confidence and how you can develop it as a skill, because far too many people believe that confidence is either something you have or you don't, that it's a fixed character trait, when in fact it is a skill that can be developed to really help you increase the trajectory, increase the joy and the ease of how you live your life. And so with that said, I'll introduce you to Nicole and our shared time together. Hello and welcome to another episode of The Bridge to Fulfillment. I'm really excited to have a guest expert with me today, Nicole Kalil, and she's really going to be talking about one of my favorite topics and one that I know is a fan favorite for those of you guys out there. So we're going to be talking about confidence and all the things surrounding that to really help you be able to level up in your life. So with that said, welcome, Nicole. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Blake, so much for having me. I am thrilled to be here. And I think we share some similarities in our background. And I couldn't be any more passionate about the idea of women finding fulfilling careers and knowing it doesn't have to be as daunting or scary as maybe we think it is. So, and confidence certainly plays part.
Oh, 100% it does. Because if you don't have confidence, and there are a lot of elements I'm sure we'll get into about how to build confidence, truly from a deep place. I think there's a lot of advice about how to build confidence, this very surface level that doesn't actually last. But if you can understand how to build confidence from a deep understanding and knowing of who you are, it's a complete and utter game changer in your life, for sure. Can you share with the audience a little bit about who you are, what your background is, and how did you come to have this passion around confidence and doing this work?
Yeah. So like many of you listening, I am many things to many people. So I am a partner to my husband, Jay, a I'm a mom to my 9-year-old daughter, JJ. I'm a business owner, a speaker, a podcast host, a soon-to-be published author, wine and cheese enthusiast, a friend, a sister, a daughter, reluctant Peloton rider, and a hotel snob, right? So the list for many of us is endless. What I think is maybe important for you to know is my background is as an executive at a Fortune 100 finance firm. And I spent the bulk of my 20s and 30s climbing that corporate ladder, chasing every promotion, proving myself, doing all the things. And it wasn't until my 40-year mark that I made the decision to step away from that very comfortable, very lucrative corporate role to start my own business. And now the work that I do is, I always say I'm obsessed with confidence. And the work that I do is in speaking and writing and supporting women to connect back to the internal confidence that I believe we all have, but have become separated from through a variety of different reasons and times in our lives. What made this a passion of mine is a moment where I recognized that everyone around me thought I was super confident, and I knew I had none of it. I'm standing in this massive conference room celebrating my promotion to Chief Development Officer, first woman in my company's 160-year plus history to ever be in any role like that. And I felt like a fraud. I was excited for about 3 minutes until all the fear, the doubt, the worries, the concerns, the will my new team respect me? Why did I get this role? And it was ultimately living a lie. The way that it looked on the outside was not how it felt on the inside. I was lonely. I was, spending all weekend waiting for a Monday morning to come so I could have purpose again. I lived to prove myself. I had an above average spending problem to go with my above average income. I just had completely lost myself in all of the work. So it wasn't just that I lacked confidence. It was this weird thing that everybody thought I was extremely confident, and it was really a hard place to live. And when I recognized that, I began to do the research. I began to read, observe everything I could get my hands on as it related to confidence in an effort to build my own. And while I was doing it, I began to recognize that I'm not alone in this feeling. And there were so many people around me, so many women that were being told to be confident, that were, being told what it means to become confident. Like you said, these kind of quick fixes that don't last. It became a personal purpose or mission to share forward my learnings with other women.
I love that. When you were telling your story, I can relate to it in so many ways, and I venture to bet a lot of women here can as well. What hit me was the words, right? The masks we wear.
Yeah.
And I think as women, especially in higher powered corporate jobs, the reality as it is, as I see it in the majority of corporate, is we're putting on armor every day. I don't know about you, but I was raised by a mom who, by her own right, very successful, worked really hard, and really from a very young age drilled into me what it looked like to be successful as a woman in corporate America. And a big part of it was always showing up professional, not being emotional, all of the things, all of these rules that I think women have been taught about what it takes to be successful. And a lot of things that I think ultimately stop us from being our authentic self, stop us from being the vulnerable leader that actually inspires people, stops us from having the confidence to stand up and speak for what we want. And so it was, to me, really telling when you said that. I think it brings it up a lot. In your case, you really sort of work became everything that was your identity. And so outside of that, there was nothing else. I think I see women do this with their families, where their family becomes everything in their identity until maybe their kids go off to college and then they lose everything else. For me, work wasn't everything, but it was where I placed my confidence. So I was very happy wanted to be more present, wanted to have more time with my family. But for me, when I came to a place when I realized I was consistently on this fulfillment roller coaster, right? First, when you move into a job, fulfilled honeymoon, and then it wasn't. And I had to make a transition. I would have said I was a very confident woman. Everyone would have said that I was. I didn't feel unconfident. So I had a different angle than you. I didn't feel unconfident until I went to make a significant change in my life. And then everything crumbled because everything was built upon, all of my confidence was built upon my ability to drive huge business results as a merchant in retail. And that's how I defined myself. That's how I saw people define me. I went through that whole thing of what are people going to think? I have this job where I get to travel overseas and buy clothes and do all this stuff that looks so fun. And what's left of me after? And so I just think this is such a beautiful thing because I think this is a consistent journey. We may all experience it slightly differently, but you get to a place in your life. I was also 40 when I chose to change my career. You get to a place in your life when you say what I'm doing is not working anymore.
Yeah.
And something then shatters. And I think confidence is a huge piece that happens in the midst of that. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. You said a few things that I want to kind of double down on. First, approximately almost 70% of women will tell you that they are confident in one aspect of their life, but not in others. And I'm not suggesting that you're not actually confident in that one aspect of your life, but real confidence is something that permeates all aspects of your life and doesn't just live in one place. So there's an opportunity for all of us, or for most of us, in that. The other thing that you said is you talked about putting on the armor and the mask. And one of the things that I've learned that was really important for me to understand and reconcile is the armor is a very masculine armor. And it almost needs to be because we don't have a lot of other available options. We learn how to be in business mostly from men. 92% of business books are being written by men. Most of the executives and leaders and mentors in corporations and businesses are men. And so even when we learn from women, your example with your mother, my guess is she mostly learned in a very masculine environment. And so she passed that down to you. And so what's happening for all of us, regardless of gender, is there's an over-rotation towards the masculine and an underappreciation of the feminine. And for those of us who, have feminine qualities, like empathy, like listening, like collaboration, those things are being undervalued, even though they're so needed in so many work environments. And what is happening is individually, I think it has us questioning ourselves. What's wrong with me? Why am I so different? Why can't I be more like blah, blah, blah? And it has us showing up inauthentically, or at the very least, over-rotating on our more masculine qualities and undervaluing our more feminine ones. But we're also really limiting the power and our opportunity in most settings. So this is damaging for a lot of reasons as it relates to our confidence.
100%. I could not agree more. I've actually talked about this on several podcasts that I believe we need to bring more humanity back to corporate America. And to me, part of that is when I say the humanity, it is the emotional side. It's the people to people side. It's recognizing that we're not numbers. It's understanding the nuances of the individual and what their strengths are. And I see that all of the time. To me, it's part of the work I'm doing individually, one-on-one with each one of my clients, because to your point, when you can understand and have confidence, it permeates every part of your life. And you can show up in alignment. You can show up authentically as who you are. And what that does is it gives power to other people to do the same. And I think there are so few examples of women who do that. And I remember through so much of my corporate career, and I still even look, even from an entrepreneurial standpoint, a lot of the examples we've been shown of women who are highly, highly successful are emotionally shut down. And as a result of that, what I see is a lot of anger and bitterness about what they've sacrificed or given up and believe that that's the only way. And I think this is also why we have such an issue, why we have such a few percentage of women in C-suite. A, because we're overvaluing the masculine, but B, because women are looking and saying, I'm not willing to do that. I'm not willing to sacrifice all of these things. When I consistently say, we're half of the workforce. If in fact, as women, we actually learned how to develop these skills, use our voice, stand for what we want, create change, we have enough people to do it, and clearly start to shift the dynamic of what's happening inside corporations, what's happening inside the workforce. And so I love hearing you say that because it's a huge part of my mission and passion to be that one of those women that says, hey, I run an extremely successful business. I run my business on 4 days a week in about 20 hours. Yeah. I have 3 kids. I have the ability to not work weekends, not work nights, to spend Fridays with my kiddo. This year alone is kind of crazy. I will have gone to 10 events by the time that everything's over. And they're events I'm getting to choose to go to grow and personally learn. And it's not a stressor for me. It's a benefit because I have the balance I need for my life. And so I just think there need to be so many more examples and so many more stories about what's possible for women, because historically there haven't been. And you're right, we've been taught by men in environments by men, and we have not understood how to use our voice or how to create that change in a way that better balances things across the board so that we can start to shift the culture in a way that's balanced both male and female.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more. We as women have so much power, but unfortunately, so many of us have bought into the lie. We bought into the con. And for a lot of us, it's for preservation reasons, right? We felt like we needed to in order to make it, in order to achieve. But you're right. I think one of the things that's really problematic is so many people are looking at those women going, God, I don't want that life. I don't want to sacrifice all of those things. And maybe even more so, I don't want to be that way, right? I don't want to be that cold or that tough or that. And I try very hard to not have judgment for any women. I'm imagining in a lot of cases, they felt that's what they needed to do to get where they wanted to get. And in a lot of cases, that's probably based in at least some truth, but it doesn't have to be that way. And we do have a ton of power to change. And all of the evidence and research supports that having more diverse leadership teams, having more diverse C-suite, having greater opportunity for, let's call it work-life balance, even though I don't love that expression, it creates not only better environments, but more productive and profitable businesses.
100%. All of the, to your point, all of the data supports it. And I think, to your point, listen, I was one of those women early in my career that believed that this was everything I had to do. And I think, to me, it's not a judgment, but I share it because I think it's a misunderstanding. And it's a huge part of why women are making themselves sick, why they're carrying the level of stress that they are, why they're so unfulfilled and unhappy. Because at the end of the day, you get to a point, I think, where you realize that the money isn't the thing that's going to make you happy. The title isn't the thing that's going to make you happy. And you have to start searching for what really matters. And I think the more we live in a land where we are doing things because we feel like that's the only way to be successful, but it's not actually what we value or believe, the more sick, the more suffering, all of the more challenges we sort of end up creating in our lives. So thank you for that.
We have the opportunity to redefine success for ourselves. And that might mean something entirely different to each one of us. For me, I think it was more about the come from in which I was doing everything. I was doing everything I was doing to prove myself to other people, because I felt if I proved myself, if I hit a certain level of achievement, if I hit a certain level of income, then I would feel good. Then I would feel good about myself. Then I would be confident. And what ended up happening is every time I hit achievements or every time my income went up or whatever, I'd feel good temporarily, but then it was on to the next thing. And I became addicted for that validation, for that achievement, for the result. I will say, similar to you, I work around 30 hours a week. I travel a ton. I take a lot of personal time, but I'm actually making significantly more than I was making at the executive level. And I am very money motivated and not at all ashamed about that. I just had to redefine success on my own terms. And I had to think about, there's not just one way to do this. You know, the culture I grew up in was first in, last out, grit, grind, who works the hardest, who has the most amount of meetings. And it took me a while to relearn, to unlearn, and then relearn how to create the success I really wanted without it having to be that way.
100%. I went through the exact same journey. What you said, I think, is super important, which is it's not the only way, right? And if you are going through that cycle of constantly chasing, I'll be happy when, and you're achieving the things, but you're not fulfilled. I always talk about achievement does not create a fulfilling life, right? They're not the same thing. But when you are fulfilled, it becomes much easier to achieve,
right?
Is what I consistently find, because everything's aligned. And then you're achieving it from a place, instead of a place of lack, because I think what you described is achieving from a place of lack. I'm not good enough. I'll be good enough when I'll prove myself to people. But when you are aligned and fulfilled, it's coming from a place of wholeness. And now it's about achieving the things because you enjoy the journey, because it's things that are meaningful to you. So I love that.
What you said jives completely with what I call the confidence con. The con is ultimately this message that we've been told over and over and over again of this false formula. If X happens, then I'll feel confident, right? So fill in X with whatever you want. If I get the compliments, then I'll feel confident. If I get the income, the achievement, the perfectly behaved children, the certain number on a scale, the certain size that I wear, the validation from this person, then I'll feel confident. That formula will never work because your confidence isn't out there. There isn't something or someone holding onto it for you. This isn't some weird life game of Where's Waldo and you're like trying to find who has your confidence. The formula that actually works is when I'm confident, I have a higher probability of X. So when I'm confident, I have a higher probability of achievement. When I'm confident, I have a higher probability of taking care of myself and my health. When I'm confident, I have a higher probability of getting validated or the compliments. And what I want to be clear, because the title of my book is Validation is for Parking, and it's a little snarky. And what I'm trying to say is all those things can still feel good. It's great to achieve. It's wonderful to get complimented. It's great when somebody comes along and validates your work. But all those things should be icing on the confidence cake, not the cake itself. Confidence, real, true, deep, meaningful, lasting confidence is built internally and then may show up in some external ways, but it's not a chicken or an egg conversation. It's not confusing which comes first. You build it internally first and then go from there.
Awesome. I love that. So with that said, I'd be interested to hear what would you share with our audience about how to build your confidence and what actually works?
Yeah. I've identified 5 confidence builders and I'll give them to you quickly. But before I do, I want to be really clear about what confidence is and what it isn't. Confidence, if you look at the etymology, the root of the word, it's when you firmly and boldly trust yourself. The reason I think this is important is because we are getting mixed and false messages. If you succeed, then you'll feel confident. If you feel good, then you're confident. If you look good, then you're confident. We have misused the word confidence so much, we've become confused about it. You can look physically attractive and feel confident, but they're not mutually exclusive. And confidence is when you trust yourself. Looking good is feeling attractive, feeling desirable, feeling successful, whatever you want to. And I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying it's not confidence. So the way we build confidence, because it's trusting ourselves firmly and boldly, is the same way we build trust with anybody. So the simplest way to think about it is, what does somebody do that has you trust them? What is it that you do that has people trust you? That's a really good insight into how you would build trust within yourself. But let me give you the 5 confidence builders and a few examples, because I think these are universal. First, action builds confidence. We can't think, hope, fingers and toes crossed, or pretend our way into confidence. We must act our way. So little risks built up over time lead to big confidence. Taking that big thing you want to do and breaking it down into action steps. One foot in front of the other, action builds confidence. The second confidence builder is, and this is the most surprising one, failure. Failure builds confidence. And I use the word failure because it's a big word, but you can replace it with making mistakes, getting messy, loss, fear, doubt, all the yucky feelings. These moments build confidence because it's much harder and therefore much more impactful to choose to trust yourself when things aren't going according to plan, when you just made a mistake, when you don't have all the answers. And choosing to do it in those tough moments builds it more strongly and in a more lasting way. Said another way, it's really easy to trust ourselves when everything's going according to plan and we're achieving and succeeding left and right. So failure builds confidence. The third confidence builder is giving yourself grace on the journey. This is how we talk to ourselves, the things we say to ourselves about ourselves, and then also understanding that it's a journey. Nobody arrives at confidence, plants a flag, and it's like, whew, I'm done, right? It is a journey that we're all on. Nobody feels 100% confident 100% of the time, which leads me to the fourth confidence builder, which is choosing confidence. I think so many of us think confidence is a feeling that we either have or we don't. Like I woke up feeling confident today or I didn't. Confidence is a choice. We've all heard the expression, fake it till you make it. I'm not a big fan of that. Being inauthentic doesn't make sense to me as it relates to being confident. So the alternative approach is choose it until you become it. Choose confidence over and over. Choose to trust yourself over and over until the feeling catches up to you. And we are doing this far more often in our lives than we give ourselves credit for. If we just had a bad meeting and have to walk into another meeting, we often dust ourselves off and bring our best self into the next meeting. If we had a really crappy day and we have to go pick up kids, as an example, we tend to somehow figure out how to show up as our best selves. So choosing confidence as opposed to thinking it's a feeling that arrives or doesn't. And then finally, the fifth confidence builder is that internal build that we do. It's building it from the inside out. And some examples here are keeping your commitments. And that is both the commitments you make to other people and the ones you make to yourself. Because when we don't keep the commitments we make, we chip away at the trust we have within ourselves. Things like communicating boundaries, standing up for ourselves, using our voice, being our own hype person. The list goes on and on. There are so many things that we can do that will build that trust internally. And that is unequivocally the best way to start if you want to build trust with yourself, which again is ultimately what confidence is all about.
100%. So what I hear is, right, there's 5 steps to start. I love those. It's interesting. Everything I look through is through the lens of self-knowledge, self-awareness, right? And I think there definitely can be some ties with what you shared. A lot of how I see what I've experienced personally and how I help my clients really build confidence is self-awareness. How can I really understand who I am? How can I really begin to appreciate what's unique about me? And how do I begin to shift the narrative about what I say? And I think it's a nice compliment to your perspective and what you look at, because what I see consistently is most of us grow up with the things that are really unique or different about ourselves, and we want to change them. Like, right, I was the girl, always has been the girl in high school who somebody would be having a tough time, and it would end up in a 2 or 3 hour conversation at this person's worst time in their life and help them. I was the girl in college. My boyfriend at the time is now my husband. He'd be out drinking at the bar, and I would end up at a table for 3 hours talking to one of his fraternity brothers. And he'd come over and say, "Why aren't you having a good time and drinking with everyone?" And I'm like, "I'm having a great time." I was always the girl who was there and would go deep and really get to know people and help them during challenging situations. But I wanted to be the funny girl. I wanted to be the one who was quippy and would show up and do all this fun stuff. And so for much of my life, I discounted the things about me that were really unique and special and enabled that were my gifts. And so when you talk about how to build confidence, I think the steps that you're giving are great pieces to put in there. They're so important, because if you can't trust yourself and you can't keep commitments to yourself and you can't take action, you can't move forward from that. But I would also layer on, I think that there's also an element to it of self-trust that comes from beginning to really understand who you are and value and appreciate it in the same way you would value and appreciate your best friend or your mom or your husband. And I think there's a real element there that when you put all of these things together, it creates this beautiful environment where you're not seeking external validation. You're not looking for other people to tell you what to do. You begin to just live life with ease, because you can handle whatever's going to come your way and you can make a good decision. And if it doesn't turn out the way that you expect, you can do something else different.
Like, you're hitting the nail on the head. The definition I use for confidence in my book is confidence is when you know who you are, own who you're not, and choose to embrace all of it. And so there is this element of exactly what you said. Confidence begins with self-awareness. It also begins with understanding what makes you different, unique, what's not meant for you. The example you shared is great. I think we all have a similar thing. I am a diehard introvert, total homebody, total introvert. And I spent and wasted so much time and energy trying to become extroverted, trying to network, which literally makes me nauseous, the idea of it. And trying to show up as the bubbly life of the party, so forth and so on. It took me a really long time to realize my superpower comes from my introversion. There are so many different meaningful things about that I was ignoring because I was so focused on trying to become something that I'm not, something that's not meant for me. And really the challenge for all of us, especially if we are going to begin to trust ourselves, is to embrace all of it. The knowing who we are and the owning who we're not. So, I mean, we are totally aligned and in sync there. And I spend 3 chapters of the book on that very thing.
I love it. So with that said, share with us a little bit about this book. And is it currently available? How could somebody find it if they want to learn more?
Yeah, so it is currently available. Validation is for parking. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or go to my website, NicoleKalil.com. It's available in some bookstores, but mostly in the online space. And it covers the definition we just talked about. It covers the 5 confidence builders and much deeper with stories and action items and the whole deal. And it also covers 5 key confidence derailers that I think are impacting women at the highest level very specifically. So all of the derailers and all of the builders impact all people, but the subtitle of my book is How Women Can Beat the Confidence Con. And because of what I said earlier, this learning of how to be a professional woman, a successful woman, a confident woman, coming so much from the masculine lens, I very much wanted to have this book be written by a woman with women in mind. So there could hopefully be a safe space to talk about the differences and the nuances.
I love that. Yeah, your definition was beautiful. What I always love is I never know when I have guests on exactly how the conversation is going to go, what we're going to talk about. But I see the same pattern emerge over and over again, which is success leaves clues. At the end of the day, we find many of the same lessons. We might experience them differently. We might use different words or phraseologies or approaches, but the universal truths are the universal truths. And I think that has come up over and over again in our conversation today, which has been beautiful. So I really appreciate that.
I love that. I love when that happens when I'm talking to somebody. It's just a reminder, again, as an introverted person, small talk is really challenging for me, and building relationships quickly is. So when somebody starts saying things and I'm like, oh, the universe brought us together. There's no other explanation for us to be saying the same thing, maybe in slightly different ways without ever having communicated. So I just love moments like this. Thank you, Blake, for giving me one of these moments.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming. Yeah, to me, that's the most fun part. I'm an extrovert. I love being the life of the party. And to me, there's nothing more fun than meeting somebody and finding that synergy. It's like, what a beautiful thing that you had a completely different experience and approach. And yet at the same day, it's at the same respect, we found such a similar story and such a similar narrative. And I think I'm obviously a helper by nature. You clearly are as well. And I always appreciate the givers, because at the end of the day, we're all just out here doing our part to help people live better lives. So thank you for allowing me to share a little bit about your story and introduce you to the people that are in my realm here on the podcast. With that said, Nicole, I think our time is just about up. So let me ask you, is there anything I didn't ask you I should have? Or is there anything just on your heart that you'd love to share as we close out?
You definitely didn't miss asking me anything. I think one thing I would just love to remind the listeners that I tell myself often is you are the only you there ever was or ever will be. And that cannot be an accident. And I know sometimes we're tempted to find our value and our worth outside of ourselves, but everything you could possibly need, your purpose. And I don't mean that we all only have one purpose. We may have multiple, but your purpose, your value, your worth, your strengths, your unique abilities, your talents, your superpowers, they're all there. And I invite you to reconnect to them, to pay attention to them, to listen to the quiet voice you haven't listened to in a really long time. You are not an accident. You're not here at this time in this world by accident. And I'm just happy you're here. So thank you for listening to us today. And that's kind of my parting thoughts.
Wonderful. Well, Nicole, if any of the listeners would like to learn more about you or stay in connection with you, how could they do that?
Yeah. So I always say, if you want to follow me professionally, go to LinkedIn. If you want to follow me with cursing, go to Instagram. I'm at Nicole M. Kalil. And my website is NicoleKalil.com, and you can find anything and everything, plus a bunch of freebies. We have a lot of free resources there. Specifically, one comes to mind of connecting back to your confidence on really tough days. So that's called Designing Your Recovery Plan, if you want to find that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And for those of you guys that joined us today, I hope that there was something today that you got from the conversation that inspired you or opened up your perspective and just gave you another tool to be able to create more of the fulfilling career in life that you would like. So until next time, have a great one. Thanks for joining me today. Rather than hope the grass will be greener, identify what the right next step is. We can help you do just that. Get clarity on where you are in your journey to career fulfillment, where you're headed, optimal paths to get there, and the right next step to take. Start your complimentary personalized career fulfillment plan at www.thebridgetofulfillment.com/plan. Again, you can get your personalized career fulfillment plan at thebridgetofulfillment.com/plan. Thanks again for joining and have a great week ahead.